Today's podcast is brought to you by StrongHeartAcademy.com, where no heart is no victory. We are also brought to you by BJJ To Go. If you want to build your game and learn jiu-jitsu, go to bjjtogo.com. Third thing we're brought to you by is Rat Bat. Got rats? Want to kill bats? Kill them with a rat bat. Fourth thing we're brought to you by is hot dog flavored water ingredients. If you want to add it to your smoothie, hot dog flavor ingredient. Hi, I'm Professor Mike Martin from Strong Heart. I'm a 4th degree black belt under Kyle Terra. Today, I want to talk about boo-boos and injuries and what's the difference, and maybe some of the crazy injuries I've had or seen doing jiu-jitsu for 24 years. The first injury I ever had was I got flying armbarred by a guy who's still in the Valley. Great guy. I'm sure he's a great instructor now. Josh Rosenberg, I think. Yeah, Josh Rosenberg. Great jiu-jitsu. And at the time, he was killing everyone in the Valley. I think I was a purple belt. He was a purple belt. And everyone goes, he's going to flying armbar you. And and instead of like keeping my arm, I extended out, and that's what he was looking for. Like, and he bellied down, meaning my arm is down, and his waist is on my elbow, and cracked that sucker. It, just tore ligaments, I think, in there. I never got an x-ray, nothing. It was messed up for quite a while, almost a year. I mean, I kept training on it. And then finally, that's how I got into yoga, actually. I did hot yoga, and they do this thing. It used to be Bikram before you got in trouble. And I got this yoga thing where you lay on your own arms. And it's kind of like restriction or flossing, I think they call it, where you take the blood flow, you're restricting the blood flow to the elbows, and then you release it, and then it's a rush of blood, because sometimes joints don't get good blood flow. And so part of the healing process is like new platelets coming in, new nutrients coming into your areas, and it's all moved through blood. Blood is like the highway of the body. So it helped. It honestly helped right away, and I was like a believer of yoga right after that. But it was the first injury I had, and most of my injuries, personal injuries, were like ego. Again, I thought, oh, he's not going to flying armbar me. I did tap as soon as I hit the ground because he was cranking it, as he should. This is a competition. And but the second injury I got, I think I was also a purple belt. I think I was like 26 or 7 at the time, probably 26. And there's another gentleman who I trained every day, sometimes multiple times a day, but he would also lift weights and run, and I didn't do any of that. I just couldn't. I didn't have the energy or money to pay for a gym membership at the time. I barely could afford training. I just had no money, and he just felt like he should beat me, even though I trained longer than him, and I would just beat him constantly. And then so one day he heel hooked me, and this was like when heel hooks were a no-no. And in my opinion, there's still a no-no in gi. No matter what belt you are, Danaher, who made him popular in the first place, says like you shouldn't be doing heel hooks in gi because you cannot slip the heel hook if you know anything about heel hooks. But anyway, he gets me in a heel hook, and I was like, F you, I'm not tapping. This is an illegal move. And he just cranked it, and it popped my knee, my outside ligaments on my outside of my knee. I always forget MCL, ACL, all of them I always forget. But it's the outside of my knee. So to this day, that one, I got an MRI on that one. It's still torn, but I had really, I think, good, honest surgeons. And he goes, hey, I don't think you should get surgery. You're a young guy. It's not bad. It'll heal if you rehab it. And I spent a lot of money trying to rehab it. But unfortunately, I was always training, and I never took time off. Never took time off. And so it would just stay lingeringly injured. It would feel good, and then boom, it hurt again. And at that time, I was doing this Chinese medicine lady, and she was a doctor, I remember, in China, but she said she couldn't get her license here because she'd have to go through school again. They don't accept, which is, I think, is good. One of the good things about our health system is they don't accept doctors from other countries, from most countries. You have to go through American med school, or there's a few other ones, but like I think Cuba, a couple other places. But certain countries are like, yeah, we don't accept that. But she was a doctor, but she did some acupuncture, and they would do these massage things first before you get in there. You get on a massage table that was like a machine. It was just like massaging your back, but you'd lay flat. It was pretty cool. Then that was like waiting room, and then she would do a massage for like 20 minutes. Then she would stick acupuncture in the knee or the injured areas. Then they would put electrodes to it, so it would do the pulse. It would have like electro pulse. Then they would put a heat lamp on it. And it's funny because now the guy I go to now has a heat lamp too. And this is like no one was doing that kind of stuff back then. And it helped. But she would say, hey, you need to take 3 months off and you'll be fine. And I just was like, cool, I'll see you next week. And I was spending quite a bit of money because that wasn't covered under health. I probably didn't even have health insurance at the time, but it wouldn't have been covered anyway. So it was like $100 a pop. So I spent like $400 a month, maybe $75 a pop. But so it was like, quite a bit of money for me, $300 a month when I was so poor, just so I could train. And I wouldn't recommend that to anybody. I was just so obsessed with jiu-jitsu that I didn't want to come off the mat. So I do recommend, like, take time off, find a good rehab place. I have these guys, Roots, that I train with now. I'll train with them today. Every Wednesday I go, and Sean is great, and Jason's great too. I don't use Jason. He's just his other partner. I've used him one time, and he was amazing. They just keep my body going through different means, cupping and ice baths and heat lamps and electrodes and all the same things I kind of did with the Chinese guy, plus movements. They're trainers. They have master's degree in training, so they could work for a college program or a professional program, a sports team program, and they would be like the trainer. But yeah, they've been great for me to keep me on the mat. So the next big injury that I got was when I just started my own gym, Strongheart, 15 years ago. So maybe it was a little bit longer. That I started so it was about a year in. But that's new for a business. And I was a brown belt. Was I brown belt? So no, I might have been a brown belt still. I don't think I got my black belt. No, I got my black belt in 2009. So I must have been a black belt. Anyway, I had this big guy. He was about 300 something pounds, maybe more. And I shot a shot on him, and he sprawled, and he tried to gator roll me, and I was like, that was my ego again. I was like, absolutely not. You're not gonna roll me just because you're a big guy. And my little ass body, just at that time, I weighed about 160 pounds, 163 pounds, and I wasn't lifting any weights at all back then either. And I'm posted on my elbows, and something had to give, so my shoulder goes, and that was another crack. That one sounded more like a water bottle when you squeeze it when it's empty, like a plastic water bottle. And that one was the worst injury I've ever had. So I tore my labrum. I didn't know it. I kept that. I competed for a year with a torn labrum. By the time I got the MRI, I just couldn't sleep anymore. And they're like, dude, it's torn in half. Does it fall out of place? And I was like, nope, never falls out of place. I was getting pain in the shoulder blade, and the tear was in the front. So they just said, hey, that's radiating pain. I'm like, that's crazy. So that brings me to like the last thing. I got surgery on that one. I did rehab. I came back too early on that one. Maybe within the most I took off was like 6 weeks, and they wanted 9 months. I was just new to the gym, and I'm like, I can't afford. I had a black belt that helped me, and I paid him, but I'm like, I can't afford it. The school's not doing great. And at that time, I was working 2 jobs. I was still doing landscaping, so I'm working 15-hour days, and I couldn't take time off, And so it never healed right. And then recently, I re-tore my shoulder again, but this time I just rehabbed it, and I'm good. Again, the guys at Roots are like miracle workers, in my opinion. I think they do a great job, fantastic job. They just know the body so well, and athletes, and they understand how athletic movements work. Sometimes doctors and even surgeons if they don't understand the sport, they don't understand the movement that you need to achieve. And it's important, I think, you get good trainers to understand, to do the right rehab. And even guys that do rehab don't understand the sport. So that's why I think trainers are more valuable, in my opinion. They just understand the movements, and the movements, is this going to create pain? Are you going to be able to generate force? What is your movement flexibility after the injury? You just got to get good guys that know that kind of stuff if you want to continue in your sport. So this brings me to pain and pain tolerance and understanding pain and what it means. And it's such a tricky thing, because like I said, when my shoulder was torn, it was radiating pain. And so meaning that the pain was making me think it's somewhere else. And I would get these knots, and basically the knot was to keep the shoulder in place so it was never falling out of place. And I also had muscle developed around it, I think, to keep it in place, just from years of a lot of shoulder work in jiu-jitsu, pulling. There's a lot of pulling in jiu-jitsu, less pushing. And so I just didn't understand how I was actually injured. So one thing I tell students is just trying to learn the difference between a boo-boo and actual am I injured? Because when initial injury happens, it's like the shock of what happened. You may even hear pops or weird noises, and that's not always an actual injury. I've seen people like pop their ankle and knee, and they're fine. In like a week, they're fine. And so it's a weird thing, pain, and understanding your own body. And so the longer you train, the more you'll kind of understand your body, which is a benefit of jiu-jitsu. I'm talking about all these injuries, but like knowing your limits of your body, where it could go before it's going to tap. What is the limit between just my wrist? How far can I go? Some people can go farther than that, and I can go that far. And look at my fingers. It's hard for me to even straighten them, kind of bend them. I'm working hard there. And the other direction. And these are all your joints. And so your range of motion, do you have strength in that range of motion where you can kind of slow down like it's Americana? I could slow it down and fight it before I say tap. Gives me time so it doesn't just release. Because it's always when you can't give any more, you're like, of resistance, when the resistance stops and it just snaps. Something can just snap that way. So it's just, knowing your body and then getting rid of the ego is so hard to kill your ego. Jiu-jitsu is an ego killer, they say, but I think it's just a way of working on it or recognizing you have an ego. It's not an ego killer. It can be. I think if you start understanding what's going on with your mind when this stuff is happening, and I think you got to understand what's going on, and just because someone's a lower belt, man, it doesn't matter. You need to tap early and tap often. One of the students that I train with, and he started at a gym before me with me, a little bit after me, but we used to train at another gym, and then he started training with me when I started my own gym, and I gave him his black belt, and his name is Sal. And Sal would tap during training all the time, and he had like no ego he's, in my opinion, the best example of a guy who had no ego in jiu-jitsu. And when he competed, he's not tapping. And he's like goes so hard and so competitive, but he just recognized like training is learning and it's okay to tap. And I was so competitive where I didn't understand. And even to this day, sometimes I'm like, I don't want to lose to anybody, even a roll. But a roll is just like reps almost. It's just like reps. It's just live reps. And so you got to go, hey, tap. And you get to train tomorrow. Or you get to train literally 10 seconds after that. You clap hands, knuckles, we go again. But you wait too long to tap, and now we're injured. And that is, again, most of my injuries have been me not tapping early enough or thinking I could do something that I shouldn't. I had a student that was really big guy. He's like 6'2", 250, and he was trying inversions, and he ended up hurting his neck, and that's just an ego thing. He's like, I want to do the cool stuff like the little guys. But it's like, you can do cool stuff as a big guy that big guys do, that a little guy can't do. And just stick with that, like, don't try to be something that you're not. It's not worth it to get injured, especially your neck. I've seen pec tears, and that one a lot of times is from steroid use. We have a doctor here that told me the statistic, it's like 1,000, since people have been taking testosterone, pec tears and bicep tears have gone up like thousands of %, which is crazy. Just because the growth is so fast that the tendons aren't attaching. They don't have time to properly attach. So the muscle's growing, but the tendons are still weak. And so it takes longer to strengthen tendons than you can grow muscle. And so, you try a movement and it rips, things rip. And so, that's a common thing. But again, that's a little bit of the ego. Is like, did you really need testosterone? Some people probably do, like really, really low, and it's really affecting your life. But I think a lot of people are just, hey, it feels amazing, and I can grow, and I can do like I did when I was 20 years old. And it's like, but just know the risks of that. Just know the risks, okay? I don't even care anymore of like people competing on it. Yeah, it's definitely, you have an advantage, but whatever. I'm just saying you can get injured. And then there's cancer from testicular cancer you can get heart disease and strokes. Those are gone up really, so that's worse than a pec tear, obviously. So you just gotta be aware of that stuff. But there's been times too where, especially with kids, where they don't know the difference yet for boo-boos and injuries. And so whenever someone, as an instructor, actually even an adult, if someone gets injured, my goal is to stay as calm as possible and look them in the eye and let them know, like, hey man, it's going to, whatever this injury is, you will eventually get better, and there's no reason to panic. I find panicking makes it worse, but especially with kids. Kids are going to look to their parents and especially their mothers, or an adult, and just look, am I okay? Am I, like, you need to tell me if I'm okay. And that's actually smart because they know, that adult has more experience. So I'm asking you, is this okay? But a lot of times it's just small bumps and boo-boos, and they get hit a little bit harder than they're used to. And jiu-jitsu can be rough sometimes. I've been hit in the face, I feel like, harder in jiu-jitsu than boxing. In boxing, they're wailing on you, but they have gloves, and I'm anticipating that that's what they're trying to do. In jiu-jitsu, it's just like a random elbow just falls and just cracks you right in the face, or a knee to the face, or even feet kicking in your teeth. So I always wear a mouthpiece to protect my lips so I don't bite my tongue off or my lips. People hate them sometimes, but I find if you train them, get a good one, you can breathe just fine with it in. If you're going to compete, or especially MMA, you have to have a mouthpiece. But for jiu-jitsu, I recommend it as well. But kids, they don't want to wear them, and they just get bumps and boo-boos all the time. And the smaller they are, the easier it is for them to cry, and they're always looking for their mom. Am I okay? So I always try to let the parents stay out of it, and I'll help them. Bloody lips, bloody noses happens a lot. Some of these kids, honestly, they pick their nose, and so any kind of bump is like a scab in there. Just break that scab, and they'll start bleeding because they already had a scab from picking their nose. I found this. I've been teaching kids since 2020 or 2003. Okay, so back to it. I've been teaching since 2003, and I've been around kids for so long. I have a little station set up for Band-Aids, boo-boos, cleaning blood off the mat, so that I can access it quick and get back to the class. We don't want to halt the whole class because your nose is bloody. I'll walk them over. Everyone's doing drills. I'll give them paper towels to clean it up. I'll say, go to the bathroom, wash your hands off, get your shoes, clean your hands, stick this up there, pinch. Then the parents usually will come over and make sure they're okay. And then I go clean blood if there's any blood on the mat. You know, I don't want people on top of the blood. We want to be safe. You know, kids are clean, but still, we want to clean the mat. Okay, I always clean it. But also reassuring the kids, hey, it's okay, and I try to get them back on the mat. We want you to not be afraid of a little bit of intensity. Okay, so if we're talking self-defense, all these schools, these modern jiu-jitsu schools are all like no rolling, self-defense. Well, true self-defense is like the violence of action and the feeling intensity of like getting hit. If you've never been hit and feeling pain and you just quit. And so we don't want that even for adults. So even for myself, I have developed, trained myself to try to never stop when I get popped, even if I'm bleeding. Now, there are limits to all this. If I'm breaking my nose, I'm probably going to stop, okay? But like I've been kneed in the head so hard, even in the balls. Even when I get hit in the balls, I try to keep going. There is, again, limits to all this stuff. But like, just get it built in that like almost like crap's going to happen, man. Like just know that you're going to get hit sometimes. And like the other thing is like not getting offended. Oh, this guy hit me again. If you know someone's like wild and reckless, then you're ready. You got to be ready that this guy is a little bit reckless. And if you're not ready to roll with that person, then don't roll with them. Just say, hey, I'm not interested in rolling with this guy. Every time I roll with this guy, I get popped in the face. There's certain people, even in my own gym, that I know, there's a black belt I train with that, man, I get hit all the time with this guy. He's just really aggressive, okay? But for me, it's good. It's like, this is like a real fight. Like a real fight. He's trying to get after me. Now, he's not really trying to hit me, but like he's so aggressive, I get hit all the time. And I try to train through that. I don't just, stop the match. Even as an adult, like you got to push through. That's just a boo-boo. It's not an injury. And you can't stop if you do a competition. You cannot stop a match because you got a boo-boo, okay? You know, unless you're bleeding, then the ref will stop the match. And you have an X amount of time to stop the bleeding before you're disqualified, okay? If you stop the match because stop, I get hit in the balls, that's a verbal tap. You just tapped to the match. So I think you need to train yourself to push through little things. And again, I feel like with kids, it is their instinct to stop, to check to see if they're okay, which is understandable. But I want to train them to train through getting hit a little bit, you know. And if they say they can't do it, I'm like, you need to sit down. I have little tiny ice packs for kids, like little ones. They're like little discs. You get it on Amazon, cheap. They're thin, little tiny things. So even the tiny tiger, the 5-year-olds, they can hold it and they could put it on. It's not this big giant thing. I have a big one for adults and I have multiple ones for kids. The other thing I'll do with kids is say, go in the bathroom, go put some water in your face, come back out. It just allows them to collect themselves, and they get. It's good for them to learn how to collect yourself. You know, when you're freaking out, go in the restroom, throw some water in your face, look at yourself in the mirror. There's something about looking at yourself in the mirror and go, oh yeah, I'm okay. There's nothing. My eye's not falling out, and psychologically, I think it's so beneficial for kids to do that. And so that as adult, they understand how to regulate their emotions properly. And it's, I think it's nothing we don't really talk about in jiu-jitsu much. I never hear anything talking about it, but it's an added benefit that parents get and kids get from doing jiu-jitsu is they learn how to control their emotions and learn how to deal with aggression and learning how to push through adversity, things that are difficult. And knowing that, like, sometimes you're going to get hurt, and we don't just quit because we get hurt, you know. And this is any sport, you know. I would say any sport should be that way. Basketball, soccer, football, baseball, any kind of, like, boo-boos, you need to learn how to play through that, okay? We got to toughen up a little bit, I think, as a nation. I don't want to be this old guy going, oh, these kids are soft. But, like, honestly, this is my 21 year teaching kids, and they are slightly different. Now, okay? But I think as an educator, that's what a coach is. You're educating them in the sport, but I can also educate them on like how to be a little bit tougher and stronger. And I think this is an added benefit, and some parents are looking for that. They just don't realize that they're looking for that. I'm gonna toughen this kid up. I've heard that multiple times. Like, my son just needs to, he needs a little bit of toughen up, because maybe, he's never done a sport before. He's never done anything competitive where he had to lose, and then definitely never physical. And so, the most competitive he's been is like video games, which is okay, but it's not the same physically losing, and then physically like getting hit or pressure on you, or someone trying to choke you. And so I think it's great training for kids to be mentally tougher and physically tougher. So when they become adults, they're just ready for the world, and they're not so fragile, because the world doesn't really wait for you to get better. Honestly, it just keeps marching on. The machine keeps marching on. So, you got to be able to toughen up a little bit. Again, I'm trying really hard not to sound like an old man, but it is what it is. I just want the reality of society and not them have a false sense of how it's going to be. And then I've also said, like, even with my own boys, it's like, look, if you're just 10% tougher than the population, you're going to be like just fine, even if you're just 5% tougher, because so much of these kids are weak now. And so, like, just a little bit more, you're going to have an advantageous position in life, and your ability to push through, even your ability to study when you're exhausted, when you're in college, or push through projects when you're an adult. You get this project has to be done, and just crushing you. You're able to push through that hard thing and not just cave under the pressure. And I think it's a great benefit if parents are looking and think, hey, I should try out jiu-jitsu. Yeah. And look, there are injuries, but there are injuries. I've heard people getting injured, getting out of bed, walking off the curb. Life is full of pitfalls. Nobody gets out alive. So if you're going to get injured, might as well be injured from a cool story. I was doing jiu-jitsu and this dude tried to take my arm, and that's way cooler story than I fell down and I hit my elbow on the ground and hurt my elbow. I broke my wrist. I fell over. It happens though. But I'm just saying, you can't avoid all injuries in life. Jiu-jitsu is a little bit more for sure, but like, you're going to learn how to deal with it. You learn how to fall. And I feel like those other injuries, when you fall on the ground, you don't get injured anymore. So anyway, that's it for today. Peace.
Let me talk for just a second, help me feel that sense of rhythm. Find the meanings in our bearings and discover this position as a stage along the way. Another rung to the ladder, either stalling or you're climbing, and I'd rather be the latter. Instead of getting fatter, let the footsteps resume.